Hello, welcome back to Python for the data science tutorial. The topic of this chapter is variables and naming in Python. I'm going to cover five major points when it comes to variable composition in Python. The first one is going to be variable naming convention. Second, I'm going to talk about some illegal variable names. And then we'll talk about case sensitivity and Python variable names, and then single versus double codes. And then finally, we're going to talk about multiple words variables compositions and some of the techniques that you can use for composing multiple word variables. So without any further ado, let's get to the first point, variable naming convention. So the variables, when you create a variable, you have to know that there are certain regular protocols and rules that you have to follow that you cannot break. Otherwise, you will not be able to create a variable name. So the naming convention or uh, uh, a set of things that you need to keep in mind. The first one is going to be the fact that you cannot use a uh, you cannot use a Python special keyword. So as you know, Python has special keywords that are exclusive to Python. And when you use those keywords anywhere in the Python syntax, it will not use them as, it will not recognize them as labels unless you specify them as character using quotes. But if you use them um, without a combination of any quotes, then it will Python will recognize them as a command or as a keyword rather than a label. So the first point again is going to be don't use special Python keywords. And so the special Python keywords again, it's going to be things just like, for example, lambda, right? So if you put lambda, let's say, and you put a value. So lambda as a variable name is going to run into problem and say invalid syntax because lambda, again, is a special Python keyword that you cannot use as a variable name. Now, if we add an a here, we're going to see that it will accept it. And when you call in lambda variable here, we're going to see that it accepts it because with the minute that we added the a, it took it out of that special keywordness to a variable name. That was the first criteria or rule that you need to know. Second one is going to be your Python variables name cannot start with a number. So don't start the variable name with a number. That means, for example, when you let's say you have a variable called age, right? If age, let's say we put the value 12. When you run this, as you can see, it was accepted, and when you call it in, there you go. Now, the moment that you add the two, as you can see, the color of the variable name change, especially adding the number, because it's now, and when you run it, you're going to see that it says invalid decimal literal because it's now thinking that you have a variable name as well as a number, a decimal here now. So you will not be able to use uh, a number or a variable starting with a number while you're composing a variable name. So that's the second. The third rule is make sure that your variables contain does not contain any dashes, and it's something that's alphanumeric. So don't um, don't use dashes. Like for example, if you say age, and if you say, let's say, if you have if you want to put age, and then say you say age two, right? Or let's say age my like let's say my age, maybe my age, and you run this, you're going to see that you run into problems. It's a cannot assign expression here. Maybe you meant to say double A instead of. So this is causing a problem because we're using a non-alphanumeric character here. So in this case, your Python, your variable name cannot be composed. The other one is don't use space. So, like for example, if you want to have my space age, right? And you run this, you're going to see that it says invalid syntax because you cannot have a space between your between the multiple words in your variable. So that was some of the most important uh, naming convention rules that I wanted to make sure that you notice. And illegal variable name, the second topic, kind of ties with this one, where again, um, anything that violates anything that violates these rules are actually illegal variable names, and I've already provided you some example. For example, using lambda, or let's say something else that could be like return, right? Return is also very Pythonic keyword, so special Pythonic keyword, and when you run it, it's a problem. The dash and the space, and also not using the numbers as at the beginning of your variable name. So that's now covered. Let's jump into third point, case sensitive. This is as simple as it sounds. Make sure that you're not, make sure that you're not, make sure that you know the difference between uh, when you case sensitivity between variables. So if you have capital letters and you have small caps, there are two different variables. So example could be, let's say we have a variable named age, and let's say we give it the age 50. And then we're going to have another variable named, let's say, age, but this time I'm going to capitalize age with a capital A, right? And then I'm going to name this 100, right? So when I run these two, and when I call them in, when I call in age, you're going to see that the result is going to be 50. And when I call in the age with a capital letter, right, the result is going to be 100. So that, again, shows that Python is case sensitive. So make sure that you keep that in mind while composing your variable. And then lastly, let's talk about, oh, not lastly, single versus double quotes. I know in some programming language, that's such an important topic, to make sure, you the difference between single versus double quotes. But in Python, it doesn't really make a difference. So for example, especially when you're creating your string variables, for example, let's say name equals, let's say if you put a single quote and you say Mike, and then we have another name, let's say name two, and oh, by the way, the number can come anywhere. Like I said, at the end of your variable name, it just doesn't have to start with a number. So let's say name two is a variable name that I'm assigning here. I'm using a number, so it should be good to go. Let's just say name two is going to be, sorry, name two is going to be, let's say, Martin, right? So go ahead and run these two, and you're going to see that it will accept that both of these are going to show me the string result as I specified using the codes. So name is going to be Mike, name two is going to be Martin. And the result are all both showing that they are recognized as strings. And how do we know it? Let's do type. Type name, string. Type name two, string. So either use the single or the double quote. Uh, both of them will be accepted, and both will have the string data type assigned automatically. And then the last one is not the least, it's multiple words variables. This happens a lot of time. I personally, when I compose my variable names, I always make sure I have multiple words just to add more clarity to the labels. So, for example, if I have a variable name, for example, that says let's say it says GDP of 2010, right? So I would put something like GDP, like let's say 2010, or let's say region, something like that, region East, maybe one. So it's not always depending on the requirement and also the context of what you're doing. It's not always a single variable name that you use, such as like age, or let's say such as X or Y. Like we use X, Y a lot in practices, but when it comes to real work um, practices, you will not be using these, single alphabets. Instead, you'll be using the actual complete multiple word variables. So some of the techniques that I probably talked about in my previous videos is, composition of multiple words, and in that we have a couple of cases or techniques that you can use. The first one is the camel case. Camel case is pretty much when the first letter is small caps, everything else is just in their capital cap state. So, for example, if you want to say my age, like let's say M will be small cap, and then everything else will be, the beginning of everything else will be capital. So my age and let's say my age and let's say my income. in Asia, right? So that is itself a camel case. So because you have the small cap, the beginning, and then everything else just capital letters that follows it. Let's say sign 34 as a value. You're going to see this was accepted as it is. The second one is the snake case. A snake case is pretty much my style. I use snake cases a lot of times, which is the use of underscores. So let's say in that case, we could do, let's say my, and regardless if you want to have the capital letter or not, sometimes it's good not to do capitals because you never know what other language, what other programming tool you use it, and some programming tools are crazy when it comes to small caps and just like Python. So it's safe to just use all small caps. So, for example, my income in Asia, right? And let's say 100. And you're going to see this will be accepted as well. And pretty much I use underscore, and the reason it's called snake case because that has the snake looking chain to it. And then the last one is the Pascal case, and Pascal. I want to call it Pascal because I speak French, and that's the way they pronounce it in French language. La Pascal case is when you are pretty much using the standard of using capital for the beginning of each word. So for the first letter of each of your words. So for example, that will be my income in Asia. The only difference between Pascal and camel case is that the camel case you have the first letter small cap. In Pascal you have everything as capital letter. Let's say this would be 200. And you're going to see that it was all accepted. That's the way it is. So this is it. These concepts and naming conventions and protocols are better explained through examples. I just wanted to make sure that I provide as much example as I can. As always, thank you so much. I'll see you guys in the next chapter.